There is not a single economics textbook in the world that does not mention this name. With his fundamental work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith laid the foundations of modern economic theory. If earlier a single worker would make a product from start to finish, now the entire production process is divided into separate operations. Division of labor is one of the greatest achievements of progressive society. This is the result of the natural human inclination towards trade. Everyone has their own abilities, and thanks to a trade economy, people can specialize in something. The baker bakes bread, the butcher sells meat, and so on. Market and the invention of money. In order to trade, sellers and buyers need a place to meet, that is, a market. Its size directly affects the scale of labor division. In a small market, specialization is impossible. For example, in a small village, porter services are of no use to anyone, whereas in a large city, they are in demand. Where there are waterways, carts become unnecessary. But with new opportunities for transportation come new challenges. What should traders do if they can't find anyone willing to trade something for their goods? The invention of money as a means of trade solved this problem. At first, certain common goods, like cattle or salt, were used as exchange currency, but eventually people began to use precious metals, which didn't spoil and didn't lose their value. And to prevent fraud, the state stamped them with an official mark certifying the quantity and quality of the metal, natural and market price. The real value of a product is the cost of its production, not what we want to get for it. The value of each product is equal to the labor required to create it. For example, if in a society of hunters and gatherers, it takes twice as much effort to kill a beaver as it does to kill a deer, then one beaver is worth 2 deer. The exchange ratio of products shows that labor is the measure of value. If calculated this way, the value of a product is constant because the same amount of labor is used in its production. Therefore, the value of labor is the true price of a product. At the same time, the nominal price may fluctuate, for example, due to a decrease in the value of gold or silver. Supply and demand. As a rule, a seller seeks to make a profit. If, for some reason, this does not happen, he must sell his product at the so-called purchase price, the price he paid for it. Of course, he regrets the loss of profit and laments the fact that he could have invested this money in other goods. The market price is the price the seller can actually get for his product. The price depends on the balance of supply and demand in the market. When there is a large supply, prices fall. Conversely, when there is a shortage of goods, they rise. If supply and demand are balanced, the product is likely to be sold at its natural price. A monopolist supplier can artificially limit the supply of a product and thus get the highest possible price for it. Compensation for labor. Before land became private property and rich people accumulated large capitals, all labor income belonged to the worker. Today, those who use someone else's property must share part of their income. This also applies to those who work for hire. An entrepreneur always withholds part of the wages from his workers. The labor market is closely linked to the goods market. When the demand for labor increases, suppliers of goods compete for the best workers. Structure and use of capital. Before the division of labor, people had no need for money or stockpiles of materials. When hungry, a person would go hunting. When they needed clothes, they used animal fur. But with the division of labor, people needed to organize stockpiles, both of raw materials for work and of articles of nourishment and clothing. As soon as people start accumulating material stocks, some of them find that they have more supplies than they need, and they try to sell the surplus and make a profit. This is how capital appears. Goods that are produced and sold are called circulating capital. Machines, tools, and real estate are called fixed capital. Decline of agriculture. Capital management happens naturally. People who make their living by working in the fields invest most of their wealth in agriculture. It would seem that all commerce and trade, including foreign trade, should be of secondary importance to them. But as modern European states developed, this order of things fundamentally changed. After the fall of the Roman Empire, occupations like farming and livestock breeding began to decline in Europe. The barbarians who destroyed the empire also undermined trade between the city and the countryside. As a result, cities became empty and peasants abandoned their fields. Freedom and ownership. Western Europe plunged into poverty, and a group of wealthy landowners seized the uncultivated fields. Land ceased to be a means of livelihood for a person. It became a symbol of the owner's power. Peasants who worked this land became dependent on the feudal landowners. The land, seeds and animals belonged to the latter. In their position, peasants were essentially slaves, and they worked like slaves, never doing more than was necessary. The more freedom a peasant has, the higher their productivity, the better the harvest, and the greater the wealth. Development of cities. City dwellers gained freedom and independence much earlier than rural ones. City craftsmen and merchants were granted privileges. They were exempted from tolls and certain other duties. But the development of cities also benefited rural residents, as cities became markets for agricultural products. Shortcomings of the mercantilist system. The so-called mercantilist, or commercial economic system, contains two fundamentally erroneous judgments. The first mistake: a country is considered wealthy if it possesses large reserves of gold and silver. The second mistake of the mercantilist system: the necessity of maintaining a positive trade balance. For example, the British, following this principle, tried to export more than they imported. The entire mercantilist system as a whole is a deceptive and extremely dangerous construct. It benefits only producers and traders, not consumers. Consumers would benefit from local goods being able to compete with imported ones. The state's attempts by the state to stimulate or, conversely, limit various sectors of the economy harm it. They do not promote progress, but only hinder its development. The state should ensure equal rights for all market participants. Of course, the state has certain tasks that individuals cannot handle. National defense. The state's primary obligation is to protect its citizens from enemy attacks. Army and police. Justice. The state should create courts and ensure the enforcement of judicial decisions. Public institutions and infrastructure. The state should take care of institutions and infrastructure that cannot be profitable for private individuals. Schools, universities, churches, streets, bridges, and canals. The proper fulfillment of these tasks by the state depends on the revenues of the treasury, received in the form of taxes. The most important principle of taxation is that taxes should be collected as a predetermined and justified percentage of a citizen's income. At the same time, the state can only tax that portion of its subject's income that the subject earned while under the sovereign's protection. Thank you for watching. This was a summary of a book from the property section of The Wheel of Your Life. To explore books across the entire Wheel of Life, including new releases, subscribe to the channel.